Well, good morning. As Pastor Joe said, I'm Evan. I'm one of the elders here at Live with Purpose Church, and I feel privileged to be here. I know it's been a process as far as me like preparing this morning, and so I appreciate the opportunity here this morning. And I just want to give special thanks to Pastor Joe and Pastor Ryan. You know, we love you guys too. You guys do so much for this church, for everybody here. You know, you sacrifice your time with your family, to be here and to make sure that we're taken care of. And you're just showing that leadership to the church. And you probably don't get enough thank yous. And, everything you do behind the scene, people don't see, but we do see it. I want to just say thank you to you guys. So, but I'm excited here to be here this morning. Like I said, preparing for, it seems like a few months. I knew I was sharing this morning a few months ago, but it's all that work that is put into something. It's nice to actually get to the point of sharing it. So today is the day I can share it. So today's message is simply about what we must have around us and what we must understand and do to be effective leaders. As you already know, in our society, businesses and churches around us are built by leaders. Strong, poor, you get your whole spectrum there, but some are structured with a top-down approach, kind of like a hierarchy pyramid. And we can see that in corporate America, and we can even see that in some churches. But what I want to focus on this morning is how we build a church through our body by establishing depth. And through the different giftings God has given to the body, we can build a team that is unshakable. In Matthew, it gives us specific examples of Jesus handpicking the members of his ministry team, which gave him great bandwidth to ensure all aspects of the kingdom were covered when he left. And we know that the disciples had the capability and the willingness to be leaders. They were mentored as leaders. They were mentored and as apostles, which created that depth in Jesus' ministry to allow the word of God to be proclaimed in every corner of the world, which it did. It interests me, though, how he did it. I mean, how was his leadership style so effective? And Jesus didn't use the hierarchy pyramid. He really inverted the model upside down by his servanthood and the powerful effects of establishing depth within his ministry. Jesus gave us a clear picture of how we view and execute leadership. So again, if you flip that triangle upside down, the hierarchy pyramid, you place the leader at the bottom, okay, in the support role, and creating depth at the very top. Amen. So our top-down approach to leadership is not how Jesus designed the church, but Jesus did not use it to build the kingdom. So I'm thinking, why are we trying to build the body and the church any other way? I'm not sure if I mentioned this to you guys or not, but every year my brothers and I go on a brothers weekend. We take a few days. It's usually Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and it's planned actually in a year advance every year. This year is actually our 12th year. I've only missed one, and I think all of us have missed. I think there was one in the beginning that we missed, but anyway, this is the 12th year. It's very exciting for us. We look forward to it every year. It's coming up in a few weeks. But it's just a time to fellowship. We sit around, we chat, we catch up. And We play games. We probably eat way more than we're supposed to. And we just kind of just enjoy our company. We go for hikes. And I think the biggest part of that weekend is our wiffle ball tournament. We have a home run derby. And so the cabin sits in the woods, but it sits at the base of a mountain. But in the front yard, it's a huge grass area. So my brother brings in it seems like 200 cones, but he sets up a cone every 2 feet around the whole perimeter for the home run line, right? And so this is something we really look forward to. I mean, we make fun of each other. It's great, and I think the one thing that's really cool is the winner of that typically doesn't have to do dishes for the next Brothers Weekend. So it's really, it's really appealing to try to make that happen. So it's a pretty big deal. But most of my childhood could be categorized under wiffle ball. I loved imitating big leaguers. It wasn't, growing up with Mike Schmidt and Lenny Dykstra and just having a chance to just imitate your stance and their throwing. There's nothing like it. But I knew growing up in that environment with my brothers in wiffle ball that I'd play real hardball one day, and I did. I got that opportunity. And my childhood career, I guess you could say, in organized baseball is still one of my favorite memories. There's nothing like hitting the ball and then running around the bases, having the other team shout and yell and scramble to try to get you out. But, playing defense was just as important for me. I played many different positions growing up. I played first base, third base, catcher, and through high school I played mostly pitcher and outfield. I remember one time I was playing center field, and the coach gave me the old head nod, hey, Evan, you're coming in. And I remember I was so competitive back then, maybe still today. Jonathan, playing basketball with him last year, he could probably vouch for that. But, I was so competitive, I knew that this was an opportunity where I can maybe psych out the other team. I typically, when a pitcher goes to relieve, they get a couple pitches to warm up so you can kind of get your feel. Well, I thought, I'm going to totally mess with these guys, and I'm just going to throw meatballs. I'm talking about rainbow pitches and act like I'm throwing it hard, because they're looking at me on what kind of picture they're evaluating me. They're looking at me and saying, what am I going to be batting up against? So I was just lobbing them in there, even maybe grunting and just and these things were just, and I would get laughed at, and they would call names, and I'm not sure if you're allowed to do that anymore, but I feel like back then that was kind of a normal thing. You always made fun of the pitcher, but anyway, sorry, it was fun, but I had to throw that in there. But anyway, our team had other players that could fill in gaps in the lineup, and this was so helpful for our coach, because it gave him options. It was if I was the only pitcher on the team, we would be so susceptible and vulnerable if I was to get hurt or tired or I wasn't there. If the team had good backups, the team could sustain a better position throughout the season, and the team could remain strong through sickness and vacation and people getting tired or hurt. But having one pitcher isn't very smart. Eventually, the other team gets used to the speed, the delivery, and of course, the pitcher gets tired as well. But so our coach had to ensure that he had a healthy alternative to each position. It's important to have depth on a team. In baseball, they have depth charts. It's simply how a team is organized, into different positions. You have your starters up top, and then you have your replacements below. And the coach's goal was to ensure that if he took the best player out of that lineup, that he could use someone else to fill the position well, and the team could still remain strong. And this was done by knowing the skills of each player. Just because you're on the baseball team doesn't mean you can skillfully pitch a game or be a catcher, or take a line drive to third base, or run backwards to catch a high fly ball. We were all designed with different talents around the baseball field, and the coach had to figure that out. Our success of our team was based on depth and the willingness of the team to engage in the game. Engagement is an essential part of this equation, because if one of the players doesn't want to be there, it doesn't matter how skilled they are. There seems to be always those players, though, that sat on the bench and were more engaged in throwing stones between the chain link fence than cheering on their team and encouraging their players. At practice, they would do the bare minimum. And they didn't really want to be there. And I'm kind of assuming one of the reasons they wanted to be there maybe is to satisfy their parents. But it wasn't to win, or it wasn't to have fun. I get a kick out of parents that would yell at the coach and say, "Put my kid in." The kid doesn't even want to be there, But I felt the Lord really using the story of King Ahab to remind me how critical depth and leadership are when building a church. I have some lengthy scriptures coming up, but it's all influenced by the Word of God, so it's all good. But it is lengthy, so I'm getting somewhere, so stick with me. So I'll be reading out of 2 Chronicles 18. I'm going to be reading verse 1 through 16. Can you say that again? That's 2 Chronicles chapter 18, verse 1 through 16. I'll give you a second to get there. I'm reading now the NLT.
2 Chronicles 18?
18, yep. So Jehoshaphat enjoyed great riches and high esteem. He made an alliance with Ahab of Israel by having his son marry Ahab's daughter. A few years later, he went to Samaria to visit Ahab, who prepared a great banquet for him and his officials. They butchered great number of sheep, goats, and cattle for the feast. Then Ahab enticed Jehoshaphat to join forces with him to recover Ramoth-Gilead. "Will you go with me to Ramoth-Gilead?" King Ahab of Israel asked King Jehoshaphat of Judah. Jehoshaphat replied, "Why, of course, you and I are as one, and my troops are your troops. We will certainly join you in battle." Then Jehoshaphat added, "But first, let's find out what the Lord says." So the king of Israel summoned the prophets, 400 of them, and asked them, "Should we go to war against Ramoth-Gilead, or should I hold back?" They all replied, "Yes, go right ahead. God will give the king victory." But Jehoshaphat asked, "Is there not a prophet of the Lord here? We should ask him the same question." The king of Israel replied to Jehoshaphat, "There is one more man who can consult the Lord for us, but I hate him. He never prophesies anything but trouble for me. His name is Micaiah, son of Imlah." Jehoshaphat replied, "That's not the king. That's not the way a king should talk. Let's hear what he has to say." So the king of Israel called one of his officials and said, "Quick, bring Micaiah, son of Imlah." So King Ahab of Israel and King Jehoshaphat of Judah, dressed in their royal robes, were sitting on thrones at their threshing floor near the gate of Samaria. All of Ahab's prophets were prophesying there in front of them. One of them, Zedekiah, son of Kenana, made some iron horns and proclaimed, "This is what the Lord says. With these horns you will gore the Arameans to death. All the other prophets agreed. "Yes," they said, "go to Ramoth-Gilead and be victorious, for the Lord will give the king victory." Meanwhile, the messenger who went to Micaiah said to him, "Look, all the prophets are promising victory for the king. Be sure that you agree with them and promise success." But Micaiah replied, "As surely as the Lord lives, I will say only what God says." When Micaiah arrived before the king, Ahab asked him, Micaiah, should we go to war against Ramoth Gilead, or should I hold back? Micaiah replied sarcastically, well, yes, go up and be victorious, for you will have victory over them. But the king replied sharply, how many times must I demand that you speak only the truth to me when you speak for the Lord? Then Micaiah told him, in a vision, I saw all Israel scatter on the mountains like sheep without a shepherd. And I'm going to just stop right there. But I want to point out that King Ahab, he demonstrated, and how he demonstrated his leadership ability. What he lacked, and compare that to the example of Jesus. In some ways, they are similar. But King Ahab had a defined mission, Ramoth Gilead. And he chose Jehoshaphat, who was known as a man of God. He certainly proved it. And despite not listening, he sought God's approval about Ramoth Gilead. Through marriage, Jehoshaphat was family. We know that. And he was not only a man of God, but he could be trusted to be a partner in such an important matter as Ramoth Gilead was. King Ahab surrounded himself with people that had his back. Unfortunately, it was people that only attended to agree with him. I mean, those 400 prophets were his prophets, not necessarily the prophets from God. And it's like a government official needing help to make a decision by bringing in specific lobbyists or interest groups to help make that decision. You're not going to get an unbiased decision when you are the interest of the interest group. You know, it's like bringing Planned Parenthood when you're trying to vote on an abortion bill. You know, you kind of understand where that's going to go. But Ahab wanted a piece of land. And he would go to great lengths to do it. And the first thing he did was team up with someone he trusted. Family. He was getting depth. Or at least he thought he was getting depth. He had to. You know, he knew he wasn't able to do it on his own. Jesus did the same thing. You know, Jesus had a mission from his Father to essentially take back what was rightfully his. The mission was salvation to the world. He was battling evil. He was fighting religion. He was fighting sin. And what's one of the first things he did in his ministry? He recruited the disciples. Back to verse 3, it said, will you go with Ramoth Gilead? Why, of course, you and I are as one, and my troops are your troops. We certainly will join you in battle. Ahab is choosing to surround himself with people that are engaged in him, not the mission. His prophets cared about him, not Ramoth Gilead. Jehoshaphat had a weak moment and chose Ahab not really the mission. And Jesus was sent as a messenger to fill the prophecy to give salvation to the world. The mission was salvation to the world. In Matthew 4:19, it reads, come, follow me, and I will show you how to fish for people. The mission. And they left their nets at once and followed him. You know, I believe they were following the mission from God, not necessarily Jesus. I mean, they were, but hear me out. When I go to job fairs and I'm looking at young professionals to bring on our team, I don't necessarily talk about myself. That would scare them too much. But I talk about what's important to the team, what the objective is, why we do what we do. No, there was a mission at hand for Ahab, Ramoth Gilead, and he used his influence to bring people in. It's a classic leadership mistake. If you are going to lead your people, they must know what it's for. It's not just about compliance. You know, you must teach them about the mission, and they need to believe that mission. Ahab continued to recruit people that could help him. Ahab was doing so well. He was building a team to conquer Ramoth-Gilead. Unfortunately, without empowering his people. Let's forget for the moment that it was really for selfish reasons. It's not really my point. But in Matthew 4, Jesus didn't use his authority. He didn't use his family connections or fear to convince the disciples to join him. The mission sold itself. Ahab is surrounding himself with people, creating depth, but people that think Ahab is the mission. It's not. This is where he failed. He surrounded himself with people, but the mission was not the focal point. Ahab was. I want to say King Ahab chose the wrong people, but really he manipulated people to essentially do what he wanted them to do. He chose the right people for him, but it wasn't focused. It wasn't focused. His team is equally, to blame. They went to the job fair and took the job because of the recruiter. Sometimes as leaders, it's hard to focus on the goal all the time. We need accountability. The mission or goal cannot only be held by the leader. That's just too risky. Everyone has to own the mission to ensure it still happens despite the opposition. It's a leader's responsibility to ensure the team knows this. The interesting thing is, King Ahab still uses the same structure as Jesus did, but he just chose the wrong people. Not because they weren't capable, it's because they didn't believe in the mission. King Ahab was a leader in the sense that he led people, but an evil one that was unable to paint the mission for his people. The crazy thing is, God gave him the opportunity to have this team, but he chose not to listen. As weak as Jehoshaphat was in that moment by joining Ahab, he was still a man of God that brought perspective to Ahab and attempted to change him with truth. And then God sent Micaiah to bring clarity. Great, a non-biased person, not part of King Ahab's interest groups. This should work out great. But he chose himself over this potential power team. He said, I hate him. He never prophesies anything but trouble for me. This is where he derailed. But it gets better. Despite the awkward dilemma by Jehoshaphat partnering with evil King Ahab, and Ahab not listening to a prophet of God, they ended up in war. They still ended up in war against Ramoth-Gilead. Here's an example of not having the correct motives with the wrong team. King Ahab already made up his mind. He was doing this before he even partnered with Jehoshaphat. Jesus also knew why he was placed here on earth before he assembled his team. Regardless if it's selfish or not, the objective came first both times. But the rest of the story is a great example. We learn from others their mistakes. We are learning firsthand from an evil king how evil works. We talk about Satan's schemes, so we know how he can attempt to alter our objective. This part of the story is what I'm talking about here, and I'm going to skip to verse 28 here. So King Ahab of Israel and King Jehoshaphat of Judah led their armies against Ramoth-Gilead. The king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, "As we go into battle, I will disguise myself so no one will recognize me. But you wear your royal robes." So the king of Israel disguised himself and they went into battle. Meanwhile, the king of Aram had issued these orders to his chariot commanders: attack only the king of Israel. Don't bother with anyone else. So when the Aramean chariot commanders saw Jehoshaphat in his royal robes, they went after him. "This is the king of Israel," they shouted. But Jehoshaphat called out, and the Lord saved him. God helped him by turning the attackers away from him. As soon as the chariot commanders realized that he was not the king of Israel, they stopped chasing him. An Aramean soldier, however, randomly shot an arrow at the Israelite troops and hit the king of Israel between the joints of his armor. "Turn the horses and get me out of here," Ahab groaned to the driver to the chariot. "I'm badly wounded." The battle raged all that day, and the king of Israel propped himself up in his chariot facing the Arameans. In the evening, just as the sun was setting, he died. Now, in colonial battles, especially British, the rules of engagement were a little different from today's tactics. From what I understand, it was not allowed to necessarily target officers in a battlefield. The military was designed for leadership to direct all the actions of the soldiers, and the soldiers were really just there. They were trained to fight. There's not much different than today's army, with the exception that it's to train each rank to know the rank of the others below and above. The goal is to know the other positions around you and believe and relieve the other soldiers on the battlefield when needed. You know, colonial warfare had a rule of engagement that officers and generals were not allowed to be specifically targeted, because if they were shot, it would just create mass panic and chaos. In Micaiah's vision, he saw Israel scatter like sheep without a shepherd. Like sheep without a shepherd. Soldiers weren't trained to take the initiative and to step into leadership and make important decisions. They were only trained in shooting, fighting, hand-to-hand combat, not necessarily strategy and organizing. If officers were lost on both sides, it would almost look like a playground full of second graders, but probably not as much fun. Just people going everywhere, not really, no direction. There had to be rules in place, like not targeting the officers to ensure some sort of harmony on the battlefield. And in the movie The Patriot with Mel Gibson, they targeted officers because they knew that each deliberate shot at the officers, the leadership, would make the biggest impact. They only had a small militia, and part of the movie, it was really only him. So he had to be as efficient as possible. So why waste 100 bullets when one would create panic? And strategically, if we were at war, I think this makes the most sense. I think we would all agree to that. Our strength of our church is not how much Pastor Joe can spiritually bench press, right? Or how much sheep Pastor Ryan can shepherd. The strength of our church, of any church, is within the depth. Is the body made up of a team of players with the same mission? Satan is the militia, targeting the high-ranking officers to disrupt the chain of command. He's seeking out standalone leaders. In today's context, Satan is targeting our pastors, our leaders, possibly because the church does not have the depth it should. As a church, if we create depth within us, the militia won't know who to target. If a leader goes down, a leader's there. It's Satan's worst nightmare. Satan has taken down churches in the same fashion, and we have to prepare ourselves. King Ahab took a similar approach to Jesus in the sense that he built a team around him, but he didn't do it around the objective. Ahab ended up not meeting the objective. He never defeated the Arameans. He chose to surround himself with people that only agreed with him. He used the people around him as leverage rather than empowering them. But he was smart enough to hide from his enemy because he knew the top of his leadership was only him, making him the target for the enemy. That's why he got out of those clothes. He knew he was the target. Even hiding and getting out of those clothes still got him killed. And I wonder how different that story would have played out if Ahab chose the right people. That people chose the mission and not necessarily him. You know, our pastors don't need really our compliance. They need us to be part of the team. We need to create bandwidth as Jesus did with the 12 disciples. We need people around us that have the objective of the kingdom when they are lobbying. A team that speaks truth and love, not what is easy. We need to enter into a time of mentorship like Moses did with Joshua and Abraham did with Lot. The top-down leadership that Ahab exhibited clearly doesn't work when trying to build God's kingdom. Leadership must be redefined from what society says it is. We need to get back to how Jesus defined leadership and how he executed leadership. Leadership is creating depth within the body by edifying, exercising genuine servanthood, and using your giftings to disciple and engage the battle. When all hands and feet are trained, the battlefield is less chaotic. If something goes wrong, it's less chaotic, less vulnerable to attacks. And when you're on the battlefield, retreating isn't an option. It also protects our pastors and our leaders from attacks. You know what I did when I was playing baseball? Probably about the same time as when I was relieving that pitcher. I would try to gain advantage anywhere I could because I was so engaged. I wanted to win so bad. So I would target the weakest player. I had a pretty good idea when they were warming up. And I'd watch the other team as they warmed up. You know, if the right fielder could not move on his feet very quickly, he couldn't move left or right or move backwards, if he had a poor time throwing, if the catcher couldn't even throw back to the pitcher, if the third baseman threw it over the first baseman's head all the time, it opened up weaknesses. And I just knew as like a batter, as for instance, the right fielder was, couldn't even, ground a high fly or a grounder. I would just wait for the outside pitch and pop it into right. I knew I could probably get a triple, but when it was really just a single kind of hit. But I would expose weaknesses to gain advantage. And Satan does the same thing with the church. He's constantly monitoring and looking at the field, looking for a poor fielder or a weak arm or a disengaged player. I mean, I knew the mission. I knew why I was there. I was there to win. But Satan knows his mission too. And he knows a poorly structured team is vulnerable. You take out the top and you find the weak spots. By not having depth, it inhibits the growth of the church. And I'm not talking about spiritual growth. I'm not talking about growth by numbers, but I'm talking about the maturity of the individual and the church. My point is the strength of the body is everyone, not just the strength of the pastors. If you don't consider yourself a leader, that may be the problem. It's time to gain perspective. If a sniper is always trying to pick off the leaders, how confusing would it be if through the sight glass, all he saw was a team of leaders? How confusing would it be if we all had the rank of leadership? We essentially remove the bullseye from those officers and protect ourselves. When we engage in battle with the body of Christ, two things happen. You are aware of the needs of leadership. And two, you understand the mission and you step up as a leader. Protecting our leaders, it's preparing you, it's strengthening the body. A leader is born by engaging in the battle and knowing the mission. Satan has devised a plan to take out the leader any way that's the easiest. If the leader has been taken out, it creates panic, disorder, and chaos. You know, we're fortunate enough to have two pastors that don't have that top-down approach to leadership. One of their responsibilities is to remind us of the mission and equip all of us as leaders to help out into the battlefield and serve as leaders with our giftings as our weapon. And they do a great job. I can't say enough for their guys, so I appreciate everything that you guys do for this church. I really do. And I was watching a movie. It was a couple weeks ago, and I don't even remember the title. It was actually a horrible movie, and it wasn't very good. I mean, the actors. Anyway, it was like a B movie or whatever you call it. But anyway, no, the storyline was really great. It was about a football player, and the football player, his dad was a football state champion. I mean, he went through high school. They won the championship. And that's kind of what his father had in mind for his son. So he was drilling this into his son all day long. Like, you'll win a state championship. You're a football player. Speaking all these things. And the guy felt obligated to be a football player. I'm not even sure deep down if he really wanted to, but you could get a sense in the movie that it was just, he was there kind of for his dad, not necessarily for himself. But the interesting thing was, he wasn't able to be a football player anymore. There was some sort of accident. I can't remember the movie exactly, but maybe a head injury that the doctor said, you're not allowed to play football anymore. And you could just see the life just drain out of this guy, when he was told that. And all of a sudden, like, the dreams of his father were just out the window. Like, he just was heartbroken. Almost more concerned about not being able to play football than the health of his son. But anyway, through this movie, he learned about track and field. The coach recruited him to say, hey, you're a great football player. I want you to come join the track and field team. And so through the movie, he was kind of like, yeah, I'll do it. And then all of a sudden, you could kind of see a shift in the movie where he was starting to get really engaged. I mean, those track and field players, I never did that, but I know they run a lot. But this guy was running before the practice started. Like, this guy was totally engaged. But as he was training and as he was getting better and being part of the team, he was gaining more confidence. Now, I don't know if this is accurate or not, because I was going to talk to somebody in track and field, but correct me if I'm wrong. They have these rankings, like 1 through 7, and 1's like the top fastest runner, and then you got 1, 2, and 3, like down to 7. So they have 7 people on a track and field team. This movie's older, so I don't even know if they do that anymore, but it's not really the point. But it was interesting. He was the slowest runner, and a lot of the meets he was not running fast. He was in very last place through the other schools. He was even in last place compared to the other number 7s. But anyway, he got to a point where he was starting to improve, and they ended up, the way they keep points is, it's actually you don't get more points for the fastest runner. You can actually make a bigger impact by the 7s, the 6 and 7 runners, being better than the other team's opponents. So my point is that this guy thought he was the slowest player, and even the number 1 and number 2 were just like, I can't believe he's slowing up the team. But it actually ended up, because of his engagement, he strengthened his team so much, they ended up winning the state championship. in track and field. It wasn't because of the fastest runner, and that was just an example of the whole team engaging in the mission and doing what they needed to do. But so we must be engaged in the game, because we shouldn't be here for our parents, right? It's game time, and we should be encouraging the body and being part of the team. Don't be caught throwing stones through a chain link fence when your team needs you. Don't get used to the meatball pitches. Salvation is a free gift, and there's people that don't know this. Jesus passed the torch to us, giving us the responsibility to join the leadership team and carry on the traditions of spreading the message. We must know the mission, why we are called here by God in this specific time, this specific place, and understand this. We are now the disciples of Jesus Christ. I'm gonna pray here in a minute, but I have a few questions that I want to leave you with here this morning. Who would you think Satan is going to target? A church full of leaders, or a church with one leader? Do I know the mission? And if so, if I know the mission, am I engaged? And we know through engagement and strengthen ourselves to be a leader, we need to know the mission and we need to be engaged. The definition of leader isn't just the manager or the guy up top. We can all be leaders, and I think that's what one thing people don't understand completely. When I interview potential candidates, I ask them, "Do you consider yourself a leader?" And I don't care who they are. They're like, "What? No?" Some of them say no. I'm like, we're all leaders to some aspect. You don't have to be standing at a podium or have a title to be a leader. But let me close this in prayer. Dear Father, we just thank you for this word, Lord. This example that you gave to us that showed us that depth is so important. You use that with Jesus, with the 12 disciples. You're using that to build great, powerful teams, Lord. We ask that you take this maybe bad example of what King Ahab did in his leadership ability and the good example of what Jesus did, and use that to teach us how we can engage to be that powerful team, that powerful church, that powerful body that you called us to be, Lord. Lord, forgive us if we're not completely engaged. It's hard to be all the time. It's hard to be on all the time. But just remind us, Lord, that it's just not on us. You are there with us all the time. You're there with us. Help us engage in the places that we're not fully engaged with. Allow us to have a different vision. Change our vision on the needs of the church and just step into that role with confidence, Lord. Whatever the church needs, whatever the body needs, whatever our neighbors need, Lord. Give us courage, give us boldness through our giftings, and just do it. Just allow us to step into that, Lord. We just thank you for your faithfulness that, you say, what you say is true. And nothing else. It's so easy to say, you tell us we're this, and we say, but this and but that. But we're not, Lord. Continues to remind us of that. We thank you, Father. Amen. Amen. So thanks for being here this morning. Thanks for everybody online. Can't see you, but I hope one day, soon, that I can see your faces, not behind masks. Because I don't even know if people are smiling at me or angry or sticking their tongue out at me. But anyway, we love you and we can't wait to see you. So, amen.